Liable to force the tail up.
During my regular check, I make sure that the emergency boost control is in automatic, as I'm only to use it in case of war emergency for not more than 5 minutes at a time.
Making sure supercharger control in automatic and not in low. Coolant and oil switches checked in automatic. Fuel booster pump on normal.
Finished check, starting engine. Clear.
The fuel booster pump draws from whatever tank the selector is on. We tried to cut down on the number of things a pilot has to do. That's why the ship has an automatic manifold pressure regulator connected to the throttle. But the pilot will have to be careful under icing conditions, because the automatic regulator will try to compensate until the carburetor is completely iced up. May I have the microphone, please, Colonel? Are you ready, Bob?
She's warmed up, ready for taxi. Here I go. The attitude of this ship makes ground visibility very poor, so S-ing is necessary even more than in most airplanes with a conventional type landing gear. In order to save the brakes, use the steerable tail wheel feature. If I hold the stick at neutral, or slightly aft of neutral, the tail wheel is steerable 6 degrees on each side. All I have to do is move the rudder pedal. The 6-degree steering feature doesn't allow sharp turns. In order to make one, I simply push the stick forward as the tail wheel unlocks and becomes full swiveling. However, excessive throttle or excessive use of brakes with the stick forward should be avoided to prevent nosing over. Making regular cockpit check. If in doubt, use the checklist. Every Army plane's got one. Flaps up. Coolers open. Trim tabs, 7 degrees, right rudder trim.
Note that I switched the fuel booster pump to emergency. The pump draws from whichever tank the selector is on.
Instruments, okay. Switches on main panel, okay. Checking oxygen gauge. Switches right panel, okay. Gas tanks, full. Running up engine, checking mags. Now, I use no flaps normally for takeoff, but if I were carrying bombs or external tanks, I might use them. So to show the operation, I'll use them this time. The best settings, 20 degrees flaps and 6 degrees tail heavy on the elevators, as the plane will get off more quickly and give a greater feeling of control that way. The manifold pressure can be used as you need it up to 61 inches. The propeller control is fully forward for the maximum RPM of 3,000. Taking off. Keeping the tail on the ground and use of rudder trim, as I said before, counteracts normal torque action on takeoff. A bit of back pressure on the stick has to be used to keep the tail down. Landing gear up. Here come the flaps. Practically no settling when they're raised.
Fuel booster pump in normal.
The plane feels normal now that it's off the ground. I'm heading upstairs.
Let's get a pair of binoculars so we can see what's going on, Colonel. There's a pair, Major.
Thank you. "20,000 feet. The supercharger just changed over in a high blower. A jump seems to occur in the engine, then the manifold pressure returns to its original setting. It switches at an altitude of between 20,000 and 20,500 feet. Heading on upstairs. 25,000 feet. I've leveled off.
Hello, Chilton.
Hello?
How is she on directional trim changes when speed and horsepower are varied?
I'll throttle back and give it a whirl. The airplane is stable at all normal loadings, but the directional trim changes at low speeds as horsepower and speed is varied. However, the rudder tab corrects this effectively with only a slight adjustment, and it should be used as necessary. Normally, there is no trouble as the plane is naturally stable.
That means the P-51B will remain at any altitude without adjusting the trim tabs.
Less work for the pilot.
Now I'm going to show her stalling characteristics. The stall is comparatively mild and occurs at approximately 95 miles per hour indicated with gear and flaps up. About 3 or 4 miles above this stalling speed, a slight elevator buffet occurs. Plane 6 at distance, then rolls over on one wing. It doesn't whip over as some other planes do and has very little tendency to drop into a spin. The recovery is completely normal. All that has to be done is to release the back pressure on the stick and apply opposite rudder. With the gear and flaps down, the stall would have the same characteristics as before, only it occurs at about 85 miles per hour indicated.
Naturally, with combat tanks or bombs making an extra load, the stalling speeds are higher.
I'll run to an accelerated stall. A heavy buffet occurs around the wing root fillet and the horizontal stabilizer 3 or 4 miles per hour above actual stalling speed, but the plane recovers immediately by releasing pressure on the stick. The accelerated stall has stronger warning characteristics than a normal stall.
Hello, Bob. Show us a couple of dives. Okay, Colonel. Here she goes.
Plane gains speed extremely fast in a dive.
Tends to veer slightly to the right and continue in a dive without pulling itself out for quite a long time. The propeller doesn't overrun during the dive, does it?
Not a bit. I put it at 3,000 RPM and it stayed nailed there. Any other questions, sir?
No, thanks. How about doing a couple of rolls for us?
Here's one to the left. Rate of roll is extremely fast, especially at high speeds.
That's due to the sealed balance aileron. It's the final result of 14 different designs.
That fast roll really counts, too.
Yes, that means the pilot can disengage the enemy a lot quicker.
We believe the only enemy ship that can approach it for speed of roll is a Focke-Wulf 190.
Here's another dive.
In the dive, the pilot doesn't have to maintain excessive forward pressure on the stick.
Catch the slight tendency to veer to the right with a trim tab.
If in a prolonged dive. Otherwise, the ship is positively stable in the dive. Hello, Arthur. I'm going up to high altitude and put her in a maximum speed dive to show you how fast you'll go before reaching compressibility.
Okay, Bob, let us know when you're up there.
Roger.